Today we're hanging out with Jerome or just Rome. Rome, how are you doing today?
Hello, sir. I'm very well, thank you.
And we're hanging out today primarily because you are about to make what I believe is your first trip to visit us here in Australia.
It is indeed, yes. Very first time I'm going to be in Australia. Very much looking forward to it. Not really sure what to expect, but I'm sure it's going to be great.
And the tour is also centered around a celebration, an anniversary of 20 years since you first began the Rome project. Is that correct?
There will be wine, yes. Yes, it's been 20 years since I formed Rome, and so yeah, a lot of stuff to look back on, but I hope more to look forward to. So yeah, no, we're releasing this avalanche of stuff this year to celebrate that and touring the world a little bit, and very much looking forward to finally meeting my friends in Australia.
You mentioned the avalanche of stuff that you're releasing this year, because so far this year there has been three releases. First of all, your most recent album, Civitas Solis, I believe translates to City of the Sun and is taken from the title of a book by Tommaso Campanella, probably butchering the pronunciation of all of
Oh,
those
that's fine.
things.
Very good.
Could you tell us a little bit about how this author and the other literature inspired uh, components of the album came together?
Well, to be quite honest, it was just a very good title that I came across a while ago. It's not so much in reference to the actual content of the book, but I just really felt like this title would reflect very well on the on the songs that I had assembled. Actually, the songs on there are, I don't want to say leftovers because that would shine a very bright light on them, but it's a lot of things that were kind of abandoned for other projects along the way. Like there's this one song, The Western Wall, that was supposed to be the title track of a whole album. And I very much liked the song, but the album was going nowhere. And so I just dropped that, but kept a few songs. And the same for other material where, like, I'm constantly working on several album ideas, and then sometimes just things fall by the wayside. And here is basically a collection of songs that are written in the last like 5 years. And it was just time to tie it all up and find some commonality with it. So that title was pretty much in the vein of all the recent work. So that's it.
Because yeah, I did a little bit of reading up on the book itself. Because I noticed, like in your press release sheet, it listed a number of authors, some of which was already familiar with, some that I very much was not. And being the one that the album title was based on, yeah, I thought that'd be a worthwhile one to have a little bit of a look in. No worries that it's not really what the album's too
Unfortunately,
much
no,
about.
not this time.
But it's got its foibles as well. But it's also ultimately a utopian tale. Uh, with the general neo folk sides of things, I kind of found that interesting as well. That quite often, I guess folk in general generally has a bit more of a somber, more sort of downbeat aspect to it. But then to have something that was about the like City of the Sun, nice, shiny, bright, utopian environment, kind of seemed like a very sort of different direction than I would expect the genre to generally take us in.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is that. To me, folk was always too sunny until Neofolk came along, which was, yeah, seriously about the dark stuff in our nature. But for a long time, I wasn't too keen on folk because it was just too much of a happy place for old people, it seemed. But then again, I have to say, I'm a big fan of all the old troubadours like Nick Cave and Leonard Cohen, most especially for me. And though that's not necessarily folk, but there is that folk tradition living on in those people as well. And then that I mixed with the post-punk era, the first kind of industrial project that there were, and all of that kind of, which also has quite a darkness to it. And I just, what I liked about the neofolk world was that it dealt with all this stuff. Some of it is like kind of a touchy or whatever, but it was just very open to ideas in general, and dissecting philosophy and just plunging into history and all of that. Is like all these fields that I was always interested in, and so this was really the arena for me to play around in.
It all came together for you. And I guess, yeah, my view of folk in general is also, I guess, a bit more colored by some of the artists that you mentioned before as well, and things like even Guthrie, and
Yeah.
sort of more classic, like, God, what am I trying to say here? Like, got a bit more sort of fight to it, and going against oppression and things like that. But then I guess, like you said, you go back to like your true, real, original folk music, and yeah, I guess you do think of like happy flute playing, and dancing around flower poles and things like that as well.
Yeah, and of course, that's nonsense. Of course, I mean it's the same for. I'm a huge fan of Irish music, for example, and when people think of Irish folk, they also just think of the jigs and the pop. But there's so much dark stuff there as well, and that sort of darker side is what always attracted me. And of course, yes, Woody Guthrie, stuff like that. It's like obviously quite political. There's all of that, and I think a good folk artist should have all of that combined in some way, all the facets of life, really.
So then that's a kind of a perfect segue to the next thing that you've released, was the Dublin session number two.
It's pretty much me just hanging out with friends in Ireland. And I did that many years ago for the first time. And at the end of that, we had a record, which kind of happened. And we just thought, let's make that happen again. And this was actually recorded in 22, shortly after the war broke out. And then that influenced, of course, all the things I was working on at the time. And so this kind of took a backseat for a while. And we only released it this year because we were trying to tie up loose ends in the anniversary year. But there was so much other stuff that I was working on that had to be released. And then okay, well, let's put that on the back burner again. So now it seems a bit aged in a way to me, but it's something a little different from the usual thing I would do with Rome, which is more me going into the studio and first recording the guitar and vocals that are written, and I have this whole plan worked out, and then of course it all goes a little differently than you expect, but it's basically just me and trying to work it out. But this is more of a live session with friends, but it's all new material that draws from the landscape of Ireland, I guess, in many respects. And it's good fun.
Nothing better than playing music with your friends, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yes.
And then the third release has been a reissue of one of your earlier pieces of work, Flowers from Exile.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's several releases. We also had this anthology looking back on the last 10 years. And then we had this kind of Marshall ambient record that I like doing those little odd things here and there, which is, this has no guitar, no vocals. It's really just collage pieces, like this sort of cinematic kind of stuff. But yeah, Flowers from Exile, that was released first in 2009. And since then, technology having moved forward, and the guy I was working with at the time, who's got his own studio in Germany, he contacted me about doing a remix of one of the songs that, like, he wanted to have like a little overview of his work in the last 10, 15 years. And he wanted to also show one of the Rome songs he was involved with. I said, yeah, sure, give it a go. And he sent me this, and it was so impressive what he had done to with the original tapes. And I thought, well, could you do that with the rest of it too? And so he did over the course of a year or two, whenever he had some moment here and there. And yeah, that's Flowers from Exile revisited. So it's got a whole new feel to it, but not too new. So it's not, we were really trying not to ruin the record for anyone, but we found so much like little detail in those original recordings, stuff that we've forgotten about, stuff that was in the mix, but not really there quite. And then other tracks that we dug up and like, oh yeah, right, we had that guy come in too, and so there's it's like a rediscovery discovery of that album, which is very close to my heart, and lots of people who know Rome know it because of that album, because it was one of those moments where things just fell into place nicely for us.
Yeah, I ended up on the Neofolk side of Reddit during my research, and yeah, it was pointed out several times on that forum as being, as you said, one of the favorite bits of material that you've ever released. And yeah, what a perfect timing for the 20th anniversary to be able to go back and revisit that earlier work in preparation, anticipation of perhaps getting out there and performing some of this material live again.
Yes, yes, we have some of the tracks in the live set. Not sure how many of them will survive until autumn when we're actually hitting the big tour, but yeah, we're working on that. It's always difficult for us to pick a set, to be honest. I mean, we have several songs that we know we have to play, and then other songs that we want to play. Yeah, so but it's a long list of songs, so it kind of falls into place automatically more because of the people that are in the band currently, and you want to show that facet of the sound. So a lot of it is just like tossed to the side, giving way for like one aspect more than the other, perhaps. So live we have lots of drums going on there and all of that. So it's less on the ballady side, which is though what I will do when I'm in Australia, because the Australian shows will be stripped back acoustic shows. So it's just going to be me with an acoustic guitar, no backing tracks, no gimmicks. So it's a very honest and intimate approach where there's not really a fixed set list. I know what I'll start with, I know what I'll finish the set with, but what happens in between kind of depends on the people, how they react to a certain vibe. Yeah.
And it's a bit like, as you mentioned before, the fundamentals of how you begin these projects in the studio, of it just being you and your guitar.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, some of these songs that I perform solo, they really go back to the original form it had. So I start out with just writing the piece on the acoustic guitar. Then I go into the studio without doing any demos, because I tend to then try to emulate whatever magic happened on the demo. So I just go in cold and try to arrange it bit by bit. And that's the final thing. There's no retakes or anything really, you know. But of course, over the course of a production, the songs might change tremendously. I might introduce some instruments that completely change the face of the song, and the guitar might disappear altogether. But here in the solo show arena, it's more like a very intimate, back to the roots kind of approach, where the song is presented in the most original form that it had, you know.
That'll be, yeah, really beautiful and unique for Australia to get to be able to experience that, especially as the first time experiencing you in a live setting. Hopefully, that then also does inspire you at some stage to return with the whole band, so that we can get all the bells, the whistles, the tricks.
Yes, that would be great. Yes, absolutely.
I was going to ask, and you kind of already touched on it a bit about, again, with the celebration and the reissuing of Flowers from Exile, that did you have any further plans to make some of that more earlier, hard to find material that you've released available, if not as full reissues, but perhaps on the streaming services?
It should all be there on the streaming services, to be honest. I think it's all there. I mean, there's some rarities here and there that were lost for a while, but we did also this, which came out last week or the one before, like a rarities collections, like a double LP, which is also released digitally, that has lots of odd bits and pieces from the past 20 years. But I think it's all online, should all be available. But yes, an actual vinyl, depending on the release, is hard to find. And there might be reissues, sure, but it's difficult at the moment to sell anything physically, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I have the thing that I always have the new album that we need to get rid of. So, yeah, reissuing. Yeah, we had plans to do a bit of that this year, but then given the situation and my suicidal plan to release all this new stuff Okay, well, let's see about re-releasing stuff, you know.
Yeah, true. Too busy going forward to look too far backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
I guess that might also work as a pretty good segue to my last question for you today. That yeah, you take a lot of inspiration from things like classical works and histories to sort of reinterpret them for a bit of commentary on how the world is today. But how do you see events happening in the modern world inspiring the neofolk artists of the future?
Oh, well, the thing is that we live in a world now, and that's a new thing to us, that we don't know what the world's going to look like in 2 years from now. I mean, we grew up in this bubble, with past history and all of that, but now it's evidently clear that we don't know what Europe or the world or anything will look like what allegiances will be made and what like alliances will be made. And it's, I have no idea. Like I have a few contradictory ideas, how it could go, but all my thoughts, like just taking the Ukraine war, uh, I don't know what's going to happen. And I have many, many close friends there. And I have a lot of information, but it doesn't really help you really in the bigger picture because it depends on so many outside factors. And I see that will have an impact on art, of course. This whole volatile situation that we're in, like just generally speaking, that will have an impact. And I think it will be a good impact for the arts, but not so good for the people. I think we live in quite interesting times, to say the least. And I think there'll be a lot of good art soon, but soonish, let's say. I cannot, predict anything really, but just that my work obviously deals with some of that. Some other people's work does, but overall, yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. If anyone will remember our name in like 2 years from now, that's the other question.
Yeah, very true. And I guess it goes down to the good old adage of those who don't learn their history are doomed to repeat it. But at the same time, it looks like we do a pretty good job of repeating things, even though we have learned our history as well. So, like you said, it's all bets are off. And yeah, I
Yes,
guess at the very least, we could hopefully look forward to some kick-ass music in the future.
there will be that at least. Yes, I think so.
But as for more kick-ass music in the immediate future, again, we're looking forward to you visiting us here in Australia later this month. Jerome, it's been awesome chatting with you today. And
Thank you
yeah,
so
all the
much.
best with these releases. And I'm sure the many more you're going to get out by the end of the year.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me and hope to see you over there.